Okay, Google, turn on my studio light. I love it. I love that so much. Welcome to the new setup. I decided to change up my setup a little bit because right behind the wall, my old wall was kind of hard to film, and I just, you know what, decided to move all my gear here so I can film towards the wall so I have a little bit more room. I'm gonna put some accent lights down here. I saw some really cool lamps at Home Depot actually, and they literally are just these little clippable lamps that don't have any like reach or anything. They clip to the bottom of things, and I was deciding to put two down there and shine them up sort of. Let me know what you guys think of that idea. Anyways, today's video, I want to talk about log profiles, and specifically, are they even worth it? Now, you might be saying, well, Grant, of course they're worth it. Like, why would companies make log profiles if they weren't worth it? See, I really want to look into this to see if they're genuinely worth it, or if you could go the rest of your video career without getting a log profile. I know a lot of cameras do come with log profiles, but in my case with the Panasonic G9, I had to buy it individually, and it came in a package that was shipped. It was really weird. It was a waste of paper, by the way. It was this box with this giant booklet in a whole bunch of different languages that they all could have just sent out in an email, but they decided to ship it anyways. I got log profile, and I've been messing around with it for the past couple of weeks and really looking at it and trying to see, well, is it worth it for anybody to get it, or should you try to avoid it? What's the actual purpose of it? Anyways, let's start off by me actually explaining what a log profile is. So a lot of cameras have different color profiles built into them. You have like your natural, your standard, your vivid, your black and white. Color profiles are basically just different looks that your camera can produce. They change up certain colors, they do certain different hues and saturations and lumas a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, they're just color profiles. They change the color of your image. Some very common color profiles people will tend to shoot in when they don't have log is either your standard profile, your Cine Like D, or your Cine Like V. Now, my little GX85 here does not have any of those. It just has a standard color profile. But what I can do on it is I can go on here and you can actually download a Cine Like D. And what that does is that gives you a flatter color profile without having to get log. Now, why would you even want a flatter color profile? Wouldn't you just want the color to be there in the image and then do a little bit of tweaking in post? Well, yes and no. If you're doing something that is very much a staged and a very technical set where you control every aspect of the lighting, where you control every single aspect that you can, you're gonna wanna also control every aspect of your camera, and that includes your color. So when you shoot in a flatter profile, that gives you more room in post to go and mess around and bring things up, bring things down. When you're shooting in log, you have to apply a LUT, which a LUT is a lookup table. It basically is a table file that looks up a different color profile. The most common LUT is a Rec. 709 LUT, which is standard across all television stations here in the US. It's a very standard color profile. The biggest reason you would get a log profile, or the reason why you would shoot in different color profiles, especially a flatter color profile, is to give you more flexibility when it comes to color grading in post. But what if you don't want to do any color grading? What if you don't know how to do color grading and you just want to shoot? What if you have a quick turnaround time and you just want natural colors and you don't even want to deal with any post-processing when it comes to color grading at all? Friend over here wants to, isn't that right? Yeah, he absolutely hates color correction. I don't know why. It's a fun thing, you should learn it sometime. I hate color grading. Never gonna do it. Sounds good. By the way, me and you are the same person. Remember that, remember that. So in this video, I want to look at and test out log and see if, do you really need it? Or is it something you can go on without? So in order to do this, I am going to set up, I would say, a few sets. And I am going to film in a standard color profile, I am going to film in a Cine Like D, and I'm going to film in a log. And I will show you the differences, and then I'll do some general color grading to each one, try to get them as close as possible as I can, and bam, I'm gonna show you why, or why not, you would need log color profiles. One more thing before we begin, I shot all of these at 400 ISO because Vlog cannot shoot below 400 ISO. I did that so all of the exposures are the exact same across the board. That way there's no weird discrepancies in my exposure, something may be blown out, something may not be. I wanted to just show how much dynamic range Vlog is said to have and to show that off with the 3 different color profiles. By the way, I also shot all of these at 4K 30, 10-bit color. So it's 422. Have to mention that, have to tell you guys that, okay, voiceover time or whatever, I'll figure this out later. So it's been about 2 weeks since I actually filmed the first part of this video. The reason for that is I've just been swamped with work, and then I had my wisdom teeth out almost a week ago, so I've been recovering from that. But during that time, I've had the time to actually edit the first part of the video and go over the footage. So what is my verdict? Well, it still depends what you're doing. I highly do recommend getting Vlog. But if your type of content is very quick, like you need to get it done, you need to get it out there, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Vlog per se. Before I go more into depth about why that's my final verdict, let's talk about the footage you guys just saw, the test footage, and let me give you my thoughts and opinions on it. So the first test footage was this set without me in it. And the biggest thing I noticed when looking at the footage through that is the standard footage, basically that color profile likes to have everything as high and as low as it can get in terms of your whites and your blacks. The blacks were pretty crushed. The whites and highlights were pretty blown out at 400 ISO in this lighting. And it just looked kind of standard. It was very high contrast, and you couldn't really mess around with that footage in post. There was a lot of noise as well within the image. Yes, I know I shot all of these test footage at 400 ISO, but that was to match the Vlog's native ISO of 400. So the cine-like color profile, the flatter one, it is a lot flatter than the standard color profile, but you can still notice that if you're in your highlights too much, if you have anything blown out, or if you have your blacks crushed too much, you can't really recover them. The Vlog footage, however, looks fantastic, absolutely like beautiful when you color grade it. Your blacks aren't completely crushed, your highlights aren't completely blown out. It looks really, really good. So the next little test footage set I did was of my Funko Pops, and that was a very white and high contrast picture as well. I wanted to test how each color profile would handle highlights and whites. And the standard, it did what I thought it was going to do. It blew out everything that was up above. Any of the blacks that were there, they were completely washed out as well. The cine-like profile brought all of that back down, and you could play around with it a little bit more, but I wanted to show off just the color profile, and it very much did recover a lot of those highlights and a lot of those crushed blacks. The Vlog profile, ungraded, I noticed across the board actually that the Vlog color profile was quite darker than everything else. It seems to keep everything very, very constricted down low. Since we are shooting at the same exact ISO as the standard and the cine-like color profiles, it brought it down quite a bit. So it recovers a lot more in the highlights in the high end than it does in the low end. And you can kind of tell in the Funko Pop test how all that white was very much recoverable, and you still had that high contrast that you could apply in color grading. So the last little test I did a face test, because one issue is with faces and trying to film is overexposing. The standard and the cine-like both overexposed my face completely. Lighting was the same, all my settings on the camera was the same, but it overexposes it completely at the native ISO of 400. Apply the Vlog, and I can still bring the color up and those highlights up as much as I want to match almost the standard and the cine, but it doesn't blow it out, and it retains the detail of my actual face a lot more. I was kind of impressed by that, and it shows that the Vlog profile recovers a lot more up high than it does really down low. So, final verdict, should you get Vlog? It's a yes and no question. And it's not a yes and no answer, because it depends what you're doing. If you want to spend the time to apply a LUT and to color grade Vlog, Vlog is definitely worth it. You should use it as much as you can. But if you don't like doing color grading, if you don't have the time to do the color grading, and you just want to get everything right in camera and in your color grading, it's just maybe a little bit of an adjustment to the skin tones, then it's kind of on the fence on that scale. I do highly recommend Vlog. And in fact, everything you have seen with me on it, I've recorded in Vlog. I didn't record in standard. I wanted to show what Vlog looks like color graded with a LUT applied to it. Now I used the Rec 709 LUT that Panasonic offers for this camera to bring it back to a standard Rec 709. But yes, I recommend it, but again, it's dependent on your situation, what you film, and how you film things. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it took a little bit longer for me to actually make, thanks to my wisdom teeth being taken out, but you know, it is what it is. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Take care.